The quiet takeover. She handed me my shattered phone like it was something she'd found on the side of the road, muttered, "Sorry," in a voice that didn't mean it, and walked off to make coffee in my kitchen like she already owned the place. I didn't yell. I didn't ask what happened. I already knew. 8 minutes earlier, I'd told her no. The screen looked like a windshield after a rock had hit it at 70 miles an hour. My daughter-in-law, Brooke, held it out to me with 2 fingers, like it might still bite her. "It just slipped," she said. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor." I looked at the cracks fanning out across the glass, then at her face. Her face wasn't sorry. Her face was waiting to see if I'd cave. 10 minutes before that, she'd asked me for $12,000 to relaunch her candle business, the same business that had already swallowed $8,000 of my late husband's retirement money 2 years ago. I'd said no, gently but firmly. Brooke didn't take no as an answer. She took it as a challenge. My son Daniel stood in the doorway of the hallway, staring at his socks like they held the answers to all of life's problems. He didn't say a word either. He never did when it mattered. I took the phone from her without comment. My hands were steady. I was 60 years old, 5 years a widow, and I'd helped lay every brick of this house in the Tucson foothills myself, back when my husband and I were young and broke and stubborn. Brooke thought smashing a piece of glass would scare me into reaching for my checkbook. That was the first mistake she made that I wouldn't forgive. I walked to my bedroom, shut the door, and opened my laptop. The house went quiet in that particular way. Houses go quiet right before something changes for good. Daniel and Brooke probably assumed I'd order a replacement phone in the morning and let the whole thing slide the way I always had. But something in me had cracked along with that screen, and it wasn't going to be glued back together by morning. Cutting the threads. It's strange how deep people can root themselves in your life without you ever signing anything. 3 years earlier, after Brooke's first business had collapsed and taken their savings with it, she and Daniel had moved into my guest room. Just for a few months. Those few months became 3 years of me paying for nearly everything and getting very little gratitude in return. I started with the cell phone plan. 3 lines under my name. Mine, Daniel's, and Brooke's. I'd been covering theirs for 38 months. A few clicks, and their lines were gone from my account. By morning, their unlimited data would be a memory. It wasn't spite. It was just me waking up. Next came the shared streaming accounts and the family Amazon login. I changed every password to long, meaningless strings of letters and numbers, then went through the list of signed-in devices and removed Brooke's tablet and Daniel's laptop one by one. I could hear Brooke laughing softly at something on the television in the living room while I worked. She had no idea she was watching her last episode on my dime. Then I handled the part that actually mattered, the limited power of attorney I'd given Daniel over my savings account years ago, back when I worried about falling ill alone. I logged into the bank's website and revoked it on the spot, then printed the confirmation and filed it away. My pulse never even climbed. If anything, I felt lighter than I had in months. I wasn't the family's emergency fund anymore. I was just a woman taking her own house back. The morning the signal died. The next morning started ordinarily enough. I sat at the kitchen table with my tea while Brooke wandered in wearing her robe, phone already in hand. She frowned at it, shook it, frowned harder. "My data's not working," she said. "And the Wi-Fi's dead too." Daniel appeared a minute later, hair a mess, scrolling uselessly at his own phone. "Mom, did something happen to the router?" "I cleaned up a few accounts," I said, sipping my tea. "After what happened to my phone, I had to rethink what I'm paying for. I can't keep covering your bills." The silence that followed had teeth in it. Brooke's eyes went sharp. "You can't be serious. I have calls today for my launch." "Then I'd suggest finding your own plan," I said. Quickly. "We're family," Daniel said, like that settled anything. "Exactly," I told him, which is why smashing someone's phone in their own home isn't exactly a family move. I watched Brooke try to log into the kitchen TV's Netflix app a few minutes later and get hit with an invalid password. Her face went red in a way that told me the message had finally landed. This wasn't going to blow over like it always had before. Locking the pantry. I spent that morning quietly reclaiming the rest of the house. I took the spare car key Daniel had been treating as his own and locked it in the small safe in my closet. When he came by, later asking to borrow the car for an errand, I told him no. The insurance was only in my name, and I wasn't taking chances anymore. Brooke came downstairs dressed for battle. "You can't just cut us off. We live here too." "You live here," I said, "but you don't contribute. Not money, and lately, not respect either." I taped a note to the refrigerator, a breakdown of their share of the utilities, effective the following month, and told her plainly that if it wasn't paid, I'd be turning the spare room she'd taken over back into the sewing studio it used to be. That evening, they switched tactics. Daniel sat beside me on the couch, voice syrupy with rehearsed concern, insisting Brooke's outburst was just stress from job hunting, that I was overreacting. When Brooke appeared with red-rimmed eyes, asking if we could go back to how things were, I told her evenly that the public library had free Wi-Fi. For one unguarded second, her sad expression cracked and something colder showed through. Then she smoothed it back over and walked away. She'd realized the tears weren't going to work on me anymore. By the next morning, I was hauling boxes out of the room she'd claimed as her office. When she found half her desk already packed, she exploded, said I was ruining their lives over one stupid phone. I kept taping boxes shut and told her I wasn't kicking anyone out, just reorganizing what was mine, and that if they needed office space, they'd have to rent some. The credit card came next. Daniel discovered at the grocery store that the joint card linked to my account had been declined. When he asked how they were supposed to eat, I told him the pantry was locked and the key was around my neck now, and that two healthy adults could certainly figure out a grocery run on their own. New locks. The real turning point came on a Thursday when I had the front door locks changed. I handed each of them a fresh key with one condition attached: pay a fair share of rent by the end of the month or pack up. I'd already placed an ad for a tenant, just in case. Brooke laughed, disbelieving, asked if I'd really let a stranger move in. It's my house, I reminded her, and a stranger would at least pay rent and not destroy my belongings. That was the moment she understood she'd lost her footing here for good. She started packing that same afternoon, telling Daniel she couldn't stay another night with his crazy mother. He didn't argue with her, he just looked lost, and a few days later, helped load her boxes into a borrowed truck. I sat on the porch and watched them go. No shouting, no last-minute pleading from me. On her way to the car, Brooke shot back one final line, that I'd regret this when I was old and alone. I just smiled. I have myself, I said. That's more than I had while you were both here. Daniel paused in front of me before getting in the truck. I'll call you, Mom, he said quietly. You're always welcome here, I told him. As a guest who respects his mother, not as someone who expects to be taken care of. What was left behind? When the truck disappeared around the corner, the whole neighborhood seemed to exhale with me. I walked through the empty rooms, threw open the windows, and let the stale air finally clear out. A month passed. I'd long since paid to repair my phone myself, funded entirely by the money I was no longer spending on 2 extra phone lines. It felt like a small, satisfying symbol. Daniel called sometimes. His voice sounded tired but more honest than it had in years. He told me money was tight without my safety net underneath them, that he and Brooke argued about it constantly. I listened. I didn't offer advice, and I definitely didn't offer cash. Instead, I told him about the pottery class I'd started at the community center and the neighbors I now had tea with twice a week. One afternoon, he showed up alone, a small box of chocolates in hand, bought with his first paycheck from a new delivery job. Thanks, Mom, he said simply. I let him in. We sat at the kitchen table and talked about nothing important, the weather, his job, and it felt, for the first time in years, like an actual conversation between 2 adults instead of a transaction. After he left, I went back to my sewing room and picked up a length of pale blue fabric for new curtains, the color of sky right after a storm finally clears. Sometimes love means stepping back and letting someone hit the ground hard enough to learn how to stand. I'd spent 3 years being everyone's safety net. It turned out the bravest thing I ever did was simply stop catching them. The house was quiet that night. Not the heavy, holding its breath kind of quiet from before. The good kind, the kind that finally belonged to me.